Welcome back, COP 1000 students. Our final major topic for this course is list, Python list. Before there were lists, we used single variables. If you recall, a single variable is a location in memory, and that location can hold a single value. If we change that value, what used to be stored there is gone forever. Computer has no way when using single variables to be able to look back. No memory to look back, which replace the value, previous value, and all previous values are gone forever. So how do we able to store things and look back? Well, one way would be an array or a list data structure. An array or a list. Before the list, we may have had a bunch of variables. That provided us a way to look back. We'd have student 1, student 2. Maybe this is the student's first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, same student possibly. If I said, well, what did he get on the second exam? 99. What did he get on the fourth exam? 56. The fifth exam, 88. Well, this kind of works if you only have 5 grades. But what if you had 500,000 grades? Would you agree that would be very tedious and difficult to manipulate? 500,000 variables. About 1 million. About 2 million. 1 billion. Imagine calculating the sum. Student 1 plus student 2 plus student 500,000 and everything in between. Min, max, average. How about counting the number of A's? Look, it's easy. There's 1. But what if I had 500,000? Well, our first list would be a better solution to put all the grades into a single collection of grades. So our first list would be a single collection of grades and would refer to them as just either grades or students or something like that. With a list, you could treat all those individual grades as just one variable. Let's talk about arrays. C, C++, Java, and most other programming languages use an array to store multiple values with a single name. An array is a major topic in data structure in most programming language. If you learn any of these other languages, you're going to learn all about arrays. Python is not one of those languages. Python does not have the array data structure. What Python does is it uses a list as their data structure to simulate an array or to replace the array. This list data structure provides many benefits and features, basically have the same kind of benefits and features as the array, but in many ways the list provides way more features and benefits. So a listed data structure where one single variable can store many items. Each of the values in the list we're going to call elements. So this would be my list grades, and this group in the middle is my elements. So in the first element is a 99, the second element 67, 87, 92, and 85. Each of these elements are referenced by a subscript. So grades sub 0 is a 99, or you can call it an index too. Grades index 0 is 99. Grades index 3 is 97. One thing that Python does that most other languages do not is allow for negative indexes or subscripts. So if you notice, the very top of the list is subscript 0 on the positive side, while the very bottom of the list is -1 on the negative side. So as I said, arrays are, lists are traversed or manipulated using indexes or subscripts. As I said, the top of the list is index 0, always represents the top of the first element. And as I said, Python's allow for negative indexes, so the bottom is -1, and we count upward. How would you create a list? Well, you're going to create a list by writing out a sequence of elements between square brackets separated by commas. So here's a list of names. Names, you know, and I'm not going to change it now, but that I like plural for a list, names instead of name. So name or names, I can't stand it. Let's call this names because it makes just so much more sense. Since a list holds multiple things, the name of the list should be plural. Okay, that sounds better. So names gets, and in square brackets, that's how we know it's a list, separated by commas, the values in a list. So Dennis, Pam, Joe, Jason, Justin. In this list names, there's 5 elements, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So element sub 2, for example, 0, 1, 2, because we always started 0 counting, is Joe. So 2 is Joe. And if we went the opposite way, negative up, -3 would be Joe, for example. So it takes a little practice, but hopefully you get used to this. So what goes into a list? Anything, basically. Integers, floating numbers, strings, images. In most programming languages, each element in an array must store the exact same data type as every other element in the array. For example, you'd have an array of integers, or an array of floating numbers, or an array of strings, but not Python. Each element in a list can contain the same or different data types in Python. Multiple ways to create a list. So we can create a list using the assignment operator. We can also create a list using what's called a sequence or a range of values. If you remember the for loop, here's that same range. So my list equals, and this is a function list range. So the numbers 1 through 12 will be placed in this list. This is what the list would look like with this one statement, 1 through 12. So if I wanted sequential values in a list, I would starting point and ending point, and my list would be populated with this one statement. I can also create a list using the multiplication operator. My list gets square brackets. Again, that's how we know it's a list. That's how we know it's a list. Multiplied by 10. So what happens here? This happens right here. I get a list of 10 elements, and each element would be initialized to the value 0. So this creates a list and inserts or initializes each element to 0. The 0 could be anything. This could be a 50 or a 5 or a 2, and everything. Every element would be whatever goes in here. This is a very common programming technique. It's done in this language and other languages to create a list, initializing it with zeros. You can also create a list from a string. Here's a string. Hello, how are you today? String gets that. So this one string equals hello, how are you today? I can create this string, take the string and parse off each of these words, or split off each of these words into this array words where elements sub 0, sub 1, sub 2, sub 3, sub 4, and so on. So this one command would create a list called words, and it would look just like this. Just like this. Okay, so we have a list, hypothetically this guy right here, values, with the values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 in it. Well, we can treat each of those like individual variables. So value sub 0 would be an individual variable, which equals 1. And I could do math in my indexes. So 2 plus 2 is 4. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That equals 5. That equals 5. Then I can also access the list from negative subscripts. -1, -2, -3. That would print 4. You can also modify the list using the assignment operator. So if I had a list and I said my list sub 6, if there were at least 7 elements in the array, Sub 6, we get assigned 666. Another just example of creating a list. So here's my list. And I'm going to go through the list element by element, and I'm going to increment each element by 1 using the assignment operator. So this is what the list looked like before this for loop. This is what the list looks like after the for loop. Do lots of cool things with lists. You can slice them up if you wanted to using slicing technique. This is the slicing technique. So if I wanted to print my list 2 to 4, 0, 1, 2, I would start here at 3 and I would stop at 4. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is where I stop, not including my stop point. So this would print these two numbers, 3 and 4, 3 and 4. So I start with the first number and I end with the element right before the second number. One thing you want to always be careful of with a list, or if you're in other languages, an array, and by the way, other languages also have lists too. You don't want to exceed the boundary of the list. Suppose you have a list of 5 elements. What would happen if you tried to print element number 9? I'll tell you what would happen. Your program would get a runtime error. It would crash. What if you had a list of 5 elements and tried to put something in subscript 5? Well, a list of 5 elements only has indexes 0 to 4. So subscript 5 is not a part of that list, and you would also get a crash. One thing you're going to do with a list is you're going to go up and down it, and you're going to use a for loop to do so. So here's an example of traversing a list. And this is what I'm going to call a special for loop. This guy down here, check it out. Here's a list called stuff. It has this stuff in it. If I print stuff, all of this prints out on a single line, just as you see it. What if I wanted to take it and make it look like this? Joe, Melvin, Dennis, Pam, Joey, Jason, Justin, Rat. I want it to come that way. Well, in this for loop, and here's my special for loop, for some variable in the array stuff. So for name and stuff. This doesn't have to be named just because these are names. Print name. So this loops the length of this list times on separate lines. I get that output. All right, this is rather long. I'm already at 12 minutes. I'm going to stop and I'll pick this up as part 2 in a second. See you in the next example.